um,
Colony.
every territory, dominions like Canada, South Africa, Australia, New Zealand, and colonies like Jamaica, Barbados, and all those other places, devalued by edict from London, except the British and US dollar, which had parity with the American dollar. The reason for this was a constitutional one. In other words, the fact that Belize had this peculiar history where the British law did not operate in Belize, except where Belizean law gave it validity. So here you had the entire empire and Commonwealth waking up this morning and find their currency devalued, and Belize remaining there with its currency retaining this parity, and the immediate drop in the price of imported goods, such as rally bicycles from England suddenly dropped, the price dropped, goods from the United States and so on. And everybody enjoyed, for 3 months, enjoyed this strange thing where, for reasons many people I think couldn't quite understand, the price of goods had suddenly fallen. The billboard, however, began to predict that there was a plot to devalue the British and US dollar. This was denied by the governor, and eventually the Lord Listowel, under Secretary of State, came out and added his the categorical assurance of His Majesty's government that the British and US dollar would not be devalued. This is Lord Listowel, after whom Listowel Boys' School is named. However, before you arrived back in England, there was a development which was to have very significant impact on Belizean politics. Because I remember it was on the 31st of December 1949, the Colonial Secretary, E.D. Hone, sent to me and said he wanted to speak to me. I went, and he said, well, there'll be a very important meeting of the Legislative Council this morning. You can attend, you can sit at the press desk, but you are not to leave during the proceedings. Afterwards, you are free to print what took place. So at 10 o'clock that morning, I sat at the press desk. I was the only member of the public there, listening and watching the legislators. And later on, Mr. Leng of the Clarion also arrived. The governor read a speech in which he submitted the devaluation bill to the legislature. The members, except for the official members, all the unofficial members, both elected and nominated, made it clear that they would not vote for the bill. So it was obvious that the bill was going to pass. And indeed, when it was put to the vote, it was defeated. The governor then got up and began to read a speech in which he gave the various economic and other reasons why the dollar should be devalued, and made it clear he was going to use his reserve powers to devalue the dollar, which is what he did. Now, people had accepted the assurances given by the governor and Lord Listowel that the dollar would not be devalued. So everybody was about their business on that the day leading up to New Year's Day. But an incident happened while the governor was reading his devaluation speech that signaled what was going to happen in the months to follow, because there was a sudden noise below in the Treasury. You know, the Legislative Council used to meet in the building upstairs of the Treasury in those days. The Treasury was downstairs, and so this noise began to increase in volume. like men arguing and even fussing with one another in more and more violent tones. The governor faltered a bit in his reading. And then the colonial secretary ran downstairs, came up back, and whispered to the governor. Whereupon the governor announced to the members, he said, well, I think honorable members will be glad to hear that the noise downstairs has nothing to do with what's going on up here. But that same kind of noise in greater volume was to be heard in the weeks and months that followed. But the complaint since at the beginning was there. Because when I came down from the upstairs, the first person I met was the superintendent of the treasury. His counterpart today is the accountant general, the man who looks after our money and so on. And he said, what was going on upstairs there? I said, oh, they just devalued your dollar. He said, nonsense, they wouldn't fool with that. But in fact, they had done just that. But in the following day, there was a huge demonstration as it got around that the dollar had been devalued. There was a huge demonstration. In those days, they didn't have to get a permit for meetings or demonstration. So there was people, they had a torchlight parade with open pine sticks lit with fire. And from Spring Bridge right down Regent Street to Government House, there were these thousands of people shouting, give me back my dollar, I want my dollar, give me back my dollar. And the governor came out to meet them, took a petition, and so on. Now, in the forefront of this was George Price, Johnny Smith, and others who were to be involved. I was around as a reporter for the whole thing. And in the next days that followed, the governor instituted a state of emergency and martial law, suppressing all public meetings and only allowing indoor meetings. The People's Committee was formed, and we used to meet at George Price House on Pickstock Street.
You were a part of that?
I was part of that. Lee Richardson was in England at the time, but he began to write articles that were published in the Billboard, suggesting that there should be an organized political party. George Price would not agree to this at the beginning, but we went to the United Nations to see what help could be gotten, and when they asked him what party he represented, and he said he represented a committee. They told him it would be better if a political party was formed. So in September of 1950, the People's United Party was formed, and by that time Richardson was back, and we ran in our first elections in the City Council.
Who made up the initial leadership of the People's United Party at that time? And what
the Honorable Johnny Smith was leader. Lee Richardson was party chairman, equivalent more or less to deputy leader. George Price was party secretary, and I was assistant party secretary. A gentleman named Mervyn Hulse and I drafted the first constitution for the POP. But before the party got underway, a charge was levied against Lee Richardson and myself for seditious intention.
By the colonial
by the colonial authorities.
What was the basis of this?
Certain articles published in the Billboard. In fact, if I remember rightly, the exact words of the indictment was that we had written that there are two roads to self-government, because in those days we didn't quite understand the difference between self-government and independence. But so we talked about self-government meaning, in fact, independence. So we said there are two roads to self-government, evolution and revolution. We are now trying evolution. this was said to indicate an intention that if evolution failed, then we'd turn to revolution. And it was argued by the prosecution that this was an offense under the criminal code and that we were liable to 2 years imprisonment.
You were found guilty?
Yes.
And you were both?
Well, we were not found guilty at that time. I flew to Jamaica and consulted the Honorable Norman Manley, who was then, I think, leader of the opposition of Jamaica. And he appointed to come to defend us. He sent his deputy, Noel Nedersol. Well, he committed himself to sending his deputy. But when I came back, we had this city council election took place, and we won 5 of the 9 seats. So the governor said that he would like to sort of compromise the whole thing and in order to make a fresh start. So this was done. He sent a letter asking the judge to dismiss the case, and this was done. However, in the following year, 1951, and the charge was revived, and this time we were actually tried and found guilty and sentenced to 18 months imprisonment. It was reduced to 12 months, providing that we filed security for good behavior.